No one looked up when she entered the room. Her boots struck the concrete floor with the same sharp rhythm as everyone else's. But somehow, it didn't matter. Corporal Elena Morales, 29 years old, tactical communications specialist, second generation Puerto Rican American, had spotless records, precise posture, and a work ethic that made lazy soldiers nervous. But to most of them, she was just support staff, the kind that plugs in wires, makes checklists, and disappears when the real soldiers show up, the kind you forget until you need coffee. That morning in Al Assad was dry enough to crack lips. As the desert heat smeared the barracks in shades of ochre, Elena climbed the relay tower alone, adjusting the antenna angles, calibrating signal strength. Lieutenant Harris passed beneath her without a glance. He muttered something like "tech girl" under his breath, then chuckled with the two soldiers at his side. The laugh wasn't loud, but it sliced. In the military, being invisible is sometimes get worse than being targeted. No one knew about the letter she carried tucked inside her inner chest pocket. It was from her sister, written when they were 16, just months before the overdose. Elena kept it with her during every deployment, a personal promise. You've always had courage. They just never let you show it. But courage, in this place, was measured in noise and muscle. And Elena was just a shadow between radios and rifles. During one of her first joint drills, a sergeant pointed her out in front of a full unit. "This is our Excel wizard. If your spreadsheet needs color coding, Morales is your girl." Laughter erupted. Even Elena laughed, but it wasn't real. It was the kind of laugh you fake when your dignity is bleeding and no one notices. From that day forward, she learned to walk faster, talk less, and vanish without being told. Her best skill? Not being seen. But at night, when the base slept and the noise dimmed, Elena came alive. She'd study intercepted frequencies in the dark, manually trace insurgent movement patterns across sectors, and log transmission delays with a ballpoint pen. Her notebook was small, worn, the spine reinforced with medical tape. She never let it leave her side. In it were diagrams, sketches, ideas, the kind of intelligence no one asked for, but would one day beg for. She didn't know it yet, but her silence was building something louder than any shout. Inside her barracks, tacked to the wall above her cot, hung a single photo. Her sister, her father, a Gulf War veteran in uniform, and Elena as a child, dressed in a Halloween army costume, saluting the camera. That photo wasn't decoration, it was motive. But here, in Fallujah, in 2004, she was just another unlogged name on a clipboard no one read, not yet. The operations room glowed blue with urgency. Drone feeds streamed across the screens, ghost-like heat signatures moving through the skeletal remains of a neighborhood in Fallujah. General Mitchell stood over the central map table, voice clipped, eyes pinned to a pinned-down squad. They'd lost communication. Extraction routes were compromised. Time was dissolving. Elena stood along the wall, quiet, observing everything. She clutched her notebook against her chest. Her calculations weren't official, but she'd tracked this signal before. She knew the insurgents rotated jammers in 15-minute bursts. She knew where the blind spots were. She'd already mapped a path, but no one had asked. She stepped forward. "Sir, I can help." The room paused. A flicker of awkward silence, just long enough to make her skin burn. Captain Langley looked up from the map, unimpressed. "Help with what, Morales? The wiring? Or the coffee run?" Laughter bubbled in corners of the room. No one stopped it. She didn't flinch. "I've been monitoring signal lapses. There's a possible 6-minute window in the south quadrant. I believe it's enough to move a squad." Langley smirked. "You believe? That's sweet. But we're trying to save soldiers, not update spreadsheets." Even the general didn't look at her. He simply said, "Can someone please get coffee?" She left the room without another word, but something inside her crystallized. It was quiet, it was cold, and it was final. That night, she walked to the backup transmission tower, her notebook clutched like a weapon. Her hands flew across the keypad, redirecting power, forcing a frequency breach. Then, she did something dangerous. She activated Protocol Obsidian Echo, a direct satellite emergency link reserved for senior officers. Her voice was steady. "Foxtrot Unit, this is Echo 3. I've identified a safe corridor. You'll have 6 minutes and change. Confirm if received." There was static. Then, "Foxtrot copies. We're moving." Hours passed. They returned, wounded, shaken, but alive, and no one knew why. Because Elena wiped every trace. No logs, no pings, no glory. The next morning, Captain Langley passed her in the mess hall. He smiled that same thin smile. "Hey, Morales, that suggestion yesterday? Not bad." She nodded, saying nothing, and added the moment to a part of her mind where she stored every dismissal, like shrapnel she'd learned to carry. If you believe the unseen deserve to be remembered, subscribe to Classified Stories, because sometimes true valor only appears when everyone is watching. Fallujah didn't echo. It swallowed sound. The orders were simple. Re-establish a broken signal relay on the eastern edge of the red sector. Technical support, they called it. No one said combat zone, though everyone knew. Elena was assigned to accompany a patrol unit, not for strategy, not for decision-making, just to plug in wires. As they rode in the armored Humvee, sand lashed against the windshield like bone dust. Buildings passed like broken ribs, skeletal, scorched. The sergeant leading the unit, Wyatt, barely acknowledged her. He ran his checklist with the others, barked codes, spat instructions. When he looked at her, it was as if she were transparent, an accessory, disposable. They reached the site at dusk. The relay station had been gutted, walls blown inward, roof half collapsed. Inside, cables dangled like exposed veins sparking faintly. Elena scanned the room, boots crunching on shattered glass. 30 minutes, Wyatt said. "Fix what you can. We're not sticking around." She began to work, but something felt wrong. It wasn't just the damage, it was the silence. No distant traffic, no radio hiss, just a breathless stillness, waiting to snap. She traced the cut cables and froze. Not frayed, severed, deliberately. Then, reflected in a shattered monitor across the room, she saw movement. A figure, 2 floors up, watching. She grabbed her radio. "Wyatt, we have company. Eyes on upper level." His voice came back dismissive. "It's a war zone, Morales. Everybody's got company. Stay on task." And then the first shot cracked the air. One of the soldiers dropped instantly, a clean hit to the neck. Another went down screaming, leg torn open. Elena didn't think. She ran toward the fallen, dragging one by the vest into the building. Bullets punched into concrete behind her. Inside the radio room, she slid to the control panel. The normal systems were dead, so she bypassed them. She initiated a priority override, the same forbidden satellite interface she used before. Obsidian Echo, unauthorized, tracked. She didn't care. "Base command, this is Echo 3. Friendly unit under ambush. Coordinates uploaded. Require aerial overwatch and thermal confirmation. We need eyes now." Seconds later, her screen lit up. The drone feed kicked in. She could see the rooftops, the snipers, the alleyways. She shouted directions. "Team, move west! You've got 6 seconds of thermal cover." "Echo 3, we see you. Blackhawk inbound in 2 minutes." She turned and saw Wyatt, blood on his arm, staring at her like he'd never seen her before. "Where did you learn to do this?" "While you were sleeping," she muttered, punching in another relay. The helicopter roared overhead. 50 cal turrets ripped through the ambush nests. Windows shattered, bodies fell, and then silence returned. Wyatt limped beside her as the evac began. "You just saved all of us." She didn't look at him. "I wasn't supposed to." The team was extracted. Mission recorded as successful. Relay station reconnected. No one officially mentioned who called the Black Hawk or who rewired the battlefield in real time. The after-action report listed her name once, under technical specialist, but the pilots knew her voice. Echo 3. Back at the base, she returned to her barracks, opened her notebook, and wrote a single sentence at the top of a blank page. "I was sent to plug in wires. I rerouted fate." The dust from Fallujah still clung to their boots when the Black Hawk touched down. Even with the rotors slowing, the mission's aftermath buzzed under everyone's skin. They'd survived. That was enough, for most. Elena was the last to exit. Her notebook, as always, held tight against her chest. No one patted her on the back. No one asked how she did it, and she didn't expect them to. In the debriefing room, Sergeant Wyatt recounted the operation. "Ambush hit hard. We responded fast, regrouped, held position. Extraction came in right on time." He said it like he'd summoned the chopper with a flex of the jaw, like he'd mapped the evac with a glance. General Mitchell nodded along, scanning the after-action files. "Solid execution, effective response, clean outcome." No mention of Echo 3, no mention of the relay override, no mention of her. She was listed in one line near the bottom. Comms support present. No additional input. Back in her quarters, Elena opened her notebook. The pages were dust-stained, but her handwriting was firm. She turned to a new one and wrote, "Truth doesn't need to be spoken. It just needs to survive." That night, a folded piece of paper appeared on her bunk. No signature, just 6 words scribbled in uneven ink. "We know it wasn't Wyatt." She didn't smile, but her breathing slowed. The next day, she was called into the command tent. Captain Carter, recently reassigned to oversee tactical training, was waiting inside. "Cabo Morales," he said, "Command has questions about a satellite override used in the last mission." She stayed still. "They want to know who activated Obsidian Echo." She met his gaze. "They should check the logs." He nodded, lips tight. "They were wiped." Silence. Then she added, "Then maybe it didn't happen." He studied her for a long second, not accusing, not impressed, just curious. "What you did, if it was you, saved lives." She said nothing. "The official report doesn't have to match the truth," he added, "but sometimes the truth finds its own way out." Back in the mess hall, no one mocked her anymore. They didn't invite her to sit with them either. Not yet. But when she passed, some nodded. A few stood when she entered. Small things, quiet things. But for a woman who had been invisible for years, they were thunder. She returned to the relay tower that evening, alone. The sun was bleeding into the horizon, casting the desert in long shadows. She sat on the floor and opened the notebook. There, she drew the comms tower again, the one they said she was only sent to fix. Underneath, she wrote, "If you're erased from the report, become the report." The next mission was labeled low risk, which meant everyone braced for disaster. A retrieval op, an encrypted signal relay lost 2 weeks earlier during a firefight. The tech inside it was sensitive. Command wanted it back. Quick in, quick out. But the target zone had gone cold. Too cold. Elena was attached to the team again. under communications support. No one explained why. No one needed to. Captain Carter led this one. He moved like someone who didn't trust maps made by other people. Before wheels up, he called a quiet briefing. 5 soldiers, 1 tech. All eyes landed on Morales, the tech. Any recommendations, Corporal? Carter asked. She blinked. First time anyone had asked her before the bullets started flying. She pulled out her notebook and flipped to a page with a green tab. This was the extraction route used last time, she said, pointing. It's likely compromised. They'll expect us on that road. Carter raised an eyebrow. And what do you suggest? She slid the book over. Here. Southern approach. Less cover, but less line of sight. Shadowed at this time of day. He studied it, then nodded. We'll take her route. Nobody laughed. Nobody objected. They deployed just after 1,700 hours. The road was empty. Buildings gutted. The air smelled like old fire and sun-baked steel. Elena stayed in the second Humvee behind the driver. Her notebook was open across her lap, as if it were a weapon. Halfway into the zone, Carter slowed the convoy. He turned to her. Why did you mark this intersection in red? She didn't hesitate. Ambush choke point. Too many sight lines. Dead silence for 80 meters. And there's always a reason for silence. Seconds later, the first explosion lit up the road ahead. The lead vehicle flipped. Gunfire followed. Controlled bursts from 3 directions. Chaos. Elena dropped low, not in fear, in calculation. She grabbed her frequency scrambler, jammed the band, then pinged an emergency uplink from a portable repeater she'd hidden in her pack. Carter ducked beside her. Tell me you just called someone. Drone visual in 90 seconds. How? I don't wait to be asked anymore. The drone arrived. Thermal imaging kicked in. Sniper on a roof, 2 shooters flanking the south wall. Elena relayed the heat signatures to Carter. Shift your men now. Use the northern wall for shadow. You have 45 seconds. They moved. 1 wounded, none dead. The ambush failed. And for the second time, her map, her mind, had been the difference. Back at the base, Carter didn't go to his office. He went to her, found her at the antenna mast, adjusting range. The notebook rested at her feet. Where did you learn all this? He asked. She didn't look up. Nobody taught me. I just paid attention while they talked over me. He picked up the notebook, flipped through diagrams, equations, dust marks. You know this isn't normal, right? She took it back. Neither is surviving. That night, Parker, one of the younger soldiers on the team, found her in the mess hall. He sat across from her without asking. You knew it was a trap, didn't you? She didn't respond. Why didn't you push harder? She met his eyes. Sometimes, the only way to make them listen is to let the silence hurt first. He nodded. Then, with a kind of quiet reverence, he did something simple. He saluted her, and this time, she returned it. The command center was a war zone of tension. Screens flickered with real-time footage, fractured comms, fragmented maps, audio feeds drowning in static. An elite recon unit was trapped in Fallujah's north sector. 6 operatives, 1 confirmed wounded. Comms down. Standard evac routes blocked. General Mitchell stood hunched over the digital map like it might bleed answers. How the hell are they boxed in like this? Satellite feeds outdated, sir, an analyst stammered. Bridge collapsed last week. Time was slipping, and every option led to a dead end. Until someone said, There's another map. Captain Carter looked up. Morales has it. Mitchell squinted. Morales? The radio girl? No, Carter said. The one who's been mapping this city by hand for 2 years. 5 minutes later, Elena stood in the center of the war room, her notebook laid open on the table. She didn't look nervous. She looked ready. "Show me," Mitchell said. She flipped to a double-spread page. Color-coded routes, hand-drawn shadow overlays, time-based patrol patterns. She tapped twice. "This sector," she said. "These buildings collapsed weeks ago. The heat signatures in this corner are drones, not men. If we guide them through this corridor and push an override on the relay tower, they'll have a 30-second window to breach extraction range." No one spoke. Mitchell leaned in. "Why isn't this in our system?" "Because no one asked," Carter said. Then he added, "Until now." Mitchell stood straight. "Make it happen." Elena took the radio. Calm, precise. "Echo 3 to Unit Sierra. Move now. East 40 meters. Avoid direct contact. Guidance will follow." Drone imaging synced with her sketch. Her voice became the thread between two worlds. One by one, the operatives moved. Each command matched a mark in her notebook. Turn, pause, slide left, hold breath. Finally, the radio crackled. "Sierra team clear, mission successful, repeat successful." The room exhaled. Mitchell turned to her. He said nothing for a long time. Then, "Your notebook saved my men." She looked down at it. "No, sir. My notebook was never the problem." Later that day, her notebook was scanned, page by page, into the intelligence archive. It was logged under civilian-level urban mapping, Morales variant. Someone tried to call it luck. Another called it improvisation. But none of them could deny what they saw. For once, the silence that followed her wasn't uncomfortable. It was reverent. Back in her bunk that night, she opened to a fresh page. She wrote, "When the truth is too precise to ignore, it becomes protocol." The morning of the ceremony felt like something had shifted. The flag was raised early. Uniforms pressed crisp. Boots shined. Even the air felt cleaner, like the desert itself had taken a breath. Elena stood at the edge of the main yard, her notebook in her hands. Not for show. It had been with her in every moment of doubt, every rerouted mission, every near death she wasn't allowed to call a victory. It was more than paper now. It was proof. Rows of soldiers lined the yard, shoulder to shoulder. No one joked. No one checked their watches. They were waiting. General Mitchell walked up to the podium. No fanfare, no background music, just his voice, rough and sharp against the morning wind. "This ceremony isn't for medals." He paused. "It's for truth." The base held its breath. Over the past 3 months, lives were saved not by chance, not by rank, but by observation, silence, and commitment no one saw coming. He turned to Elena. "Corporal Elena Morales, front and center." She didn't move at first. Her feet were rooted in 1,000 moments of dismissal, silence, neglect. Then they moved, and every step echoed louder than words. She climbed the small platform, stood straight, notebook still clutched to her side. Mitchell didn't read a citation. He didn't need to. You rewrote the map. You filled in the blanks others ignored. You spoke when no one listened. And when you couldn't speak, you mapped the truth anyway. He opened a box. Inside, the Strategic Valor Medal, rarely awarded. Never to someone outside combat command, until now. He pinned it on her uniform. It glinted just below the tear on her shoulder seam, the one she never fixed. No applause followed. Instead, silence. But it wasn't cold this time. It was the silence of respect, the kind that vibrates in the air, the kind that means something. And then, a sound. One pair of boots snapped together, then another, then 100. Every soldier stood at attention. Every single one saluted. Not the general, her. And then Parker, from the younger unit, stepped forward. He pulled something from his chest pocket, a small black notebook. He held it up in the air, high. Others followed. Folded maps, scrap sheets, personal journals, tactical notebooks. The yard became a forest of raised paper. No one said it out loud, but the message was clear. We see you now. We learned from you. We carry what you carried. Elena blinked hard. No tears fell, but the weight in her chest cracked. As she stepped down from the platform, Carter waited at the base. He nodded once. You didn't just change the playbook, he said. You made them admit there was a better one all along. Later that night, she returned to the comms tower. The base was quiet again, but it was a different quiet. She sat under the antenna, opened her notebook, and wrote. Sometimes silence isn't the absence of recognition. It's just waiting for the moment everyone finally hears what you've been saying all along. The base didn't change overnight, but something had shifted. You could hear it in the silence. No more jokes when she entered a room. No more quick glances, then looking away. Now, when Elena Morales walked through the halls, people noticed, not with noise, with space, with respect. Weeks after the ceremony, small changes began to take root. A new section appeared in tactical training manuals, zone mapping, urban field notes integration. A side module, attributed only by initials, based on EM protocols. Cadets were now taught to read shadows, not just GPS, to listen to quiet zones, to watch for what wasn't moving as much as what was. It was slow, but it was real. At first, Elena declined every interview request. She wasn't interested in being the face of anything. But when the intelligence unit invited her to speak with a new cohort, just cadets, just a 30-minute session, she said yes. She stood in front of a group of young recruits, most barely 20, all of them eager, all of them silent when she walked in. She didn't bring slides, no PowerPoint, just the notebook. I was never asked to lead, she began. No one handed me a flag or a megaphone. She opened the notebook to a torn page, burned at the corner. But every time I was ignored, I wrote. Every time I was dismissed, I mapped. And eventually, when it mattered most, I had the only map that could bring people home. No one blinked. When the session ended, a young woman approached her, quiet, nervous. Ma'am, I've been keeping a field book too. She held it up. It was dog-eared, smudged, real. Elena took it, turned a few pages, then handed it back. Don't wait for permission, she said. Document the truth, even when no one's watching. Back on base, changes continued to echo. A plaque was installed in the comms tower. Simple. No photo, no flowers, just a phrase carved into steel. Echo 3. The one who saw in silence. Elena didn't ask for it, didn't expect it. But the day she saw it, she stood there longer than she meant to, then walked away, quietly, like always. One evening, just before deployment rotation, she returned to her bunk. On her pillow was a sealed envelope. Inside, an official memo. Promotion. New assignment. Training and tactical development. Signal Corps. Below it, handwritten in pen, there are maps we can only follow once someone is brave enough to draw them. Carter. She didn't smile, but she folded the letter carefully and placed it in the back of her notebook. Not the new one, the old one. The one that had survived sand, ash, and silence. That night, she climbed the tower once more, alone. No ceremonies, no applause. She sat beneath the blinking red light at the top, opened to the final page and wrote, "I was called support, invisible, unnecessary, until the world burned and someone needed a map. Now they call me Echo 3, but I'm still just drawing lines in silence, so no one else gets left behind." She closed the notebook, exhaled, and for the first time in her military life, felt at peace.